let's put the Sun back on the screen. Some of the subheads, some of the sidebar stories we're not getting to down at the bottom. Boris Johnson, who just resigned from the May cabinet, would make a great prime minister. That would be like someone coming for a state dinner at the White House saying, you know, I've always liked that Jeb Bush fella. The center story, immigration is killing Europe. And on the right, the mayor of London is at fault for terrorism. Apparently, always a good way to get in with your hosts. So, Michael, let's back up to NATO and what is left of NATO, and how existential a crisis have they been through this week?
Well, this is a tricky one to evaluate, Brian, because, you know, on paper, NATO is doing fine, and the spending is up on a trajectory that began before Trump's presidency, despite his inaccurate claims that defense spending by NATO members has increased since his election. They are spending more on defense. Their capabilities are improving. There's good news coming out of NATO sort of on paper, but there's a huge kind of political, psychological dynamic here. And Trump just swung a wrecking ball through the psyche of the NATO alliance. And, you know, frankly, according to reporting from Politico's reporters who were in Brussels, we actually have a European branch of Politico that's based there, so we have good sources there. You know, the European leaders there were just completely, even in the context of the Donald Trump they've experienced for 18 months, were completely bewildered by this performance, didn't know what to make of it. Brian, it made me think of the scene in Apocalypse Now when Colonel Kurtz says, "Do you think my methods are unsound?" And Charlie Sheen responds to him, "I don't see any method at all." That was the response of these European leaders. They just feel like he is all over the map. Many of them don't actually think there's some hidden strategy behind it. They just see a very erratic man. You know, Trump today maybe jokingly referred to himself as a very stable genius. I think a lot of the NATO officials in that room felt exactly the opposite. And you know, just to conclude the point, what is the substantive implication of that? Is that they're not sure they can rely on the United States, at least for the next 2.5 years, and are going to have to be looking out for themselves more, and possibly looking for other protectors if it's not going to be America.
So, Catherine, lunch with the Prime Minister, tea with the Queen. One is not supposed to raise politics when one is with the Queen, but one Donald Trump just might. How to avoid the discomfort we are all guessing will be in the air tomorrow?
You know, I think that when it comes to tea with the Queen, even President Trump is going to probably be on his good behavior. And we know he has a lot of we believe this is a meeting he has wanted. He presumably has been coached on protocol, and the Queen is not someone who's going to be political. And she, of course, has met any number of political leaders of all stripes over a very long time in her role. So the First Lady, I believe, will be there as well, if I'm correct. So I think that probably will be a sort of a temperature lowering moment.
And the Prime Minister's meeting may be something different. It'll be interesting to get a readout of how they get along with that story splashed on the front page of The Sun.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me, or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.